I never thought I'd see the day when a dog could change everything. But that's exactly what happened. A German shepherd, abandoned and left for dead, would end up saving the life of a nurse who was too close to the edge of fate. It all started on a cold, dreary morning, with the air thick and heavy with the scent of rain. The world seemed to hold its breath as I approached the shelter. Inside, there was a small, trembling figure lying on a cold metal table, its fur matted and eyes barely open. It was supposed to be just another sad case, another dog too broken to be saved. But something about him caught my eye. Maybe it was the quiet determination in his eyes, or the way he seemed to know I was there to help. This wasn't just any dog. This was a dog with a story, a dog who had survived against the odds. They told me he wouldn't make it through the night. His condition was too far gone. The vet said it was only a matter of time before he'd have to be put down. But I wasn't ready to give up on him. Not yet. As I placed a hand on his head, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. There was a spark in him, something I couldn't explain. I stayed with him through the night, talking softly, telling him he wasn't alone. And then, as if by some miracle, he opened his eyes. Just a small movement at first, but enough to make me believe. The next morning, I was there again. The shelter was quiet, save for the sound of rain tapping on the windows. The staff had already started their rounds, but I couldn't leave his side. I knew I had to see this through. His breathing was still shallow, but there was something stronger now in his presence. He was fighting, not just for his life, but for something more. And then, it happened. In a moment of sheer instinct, he lifted his head and made a soft whimper, as if trying to say something. He wasn't just lying there anymore. He was alive, and he was telling me that he wasn't ready to give up. A few weeks passed, and I couldn't help but grow attached. His recovery was slow, but it was progress. We named him Max. He had a spirit that matched his strength, unwavering, determined. But little did I know, Max wasn't done with his story. A few months later, when I thought he was finally settled, we were faced with a situation none of us expected. A nurse in the hospital had collapsed. She was in critical condition, and the doctors couldn't seem to stabilize her. That's when Max, who had grown to be my loyal companion, stepped in. The moment I saw him, I knew something had shifted. He wasn't just my dog anymore. He had become something more, a hero in his own right. When Max walked into that hospital room, he knew exactly what to do. The nurse, who had been unresponsive for hours, opened her eyes just as Max sat beside her. It was as if his presence alone had brought her back from the brink. I still don't know how it happened. Was it the bond between us? Was it the miracle of timing? Or was it just Max's unwavering loyalty that gave her the strength she needed? Whatever it was, it worked. Max had saved her life. That moment changed everything. Max went from being the dog no one thought would survive to the dog who changed the course of someone else's life. It wasn't just a rescue. It was a reminder of how strong the connection between humans and animals can be, and how love, loyalty, and a little bit of faith can work wonders. I sat there, staring at Max as he lay by my feet. The world outside was gray, the clouds thick with rain, but inside the small hospital room, there was a quiet peace. I had never thought a dog could change the course of a life, but Max had already done that once. And now, as I watched him rest, I couldn't help but wonder what more he was capable of. He had come from nothing, from a place of abandonment and despair. But now, he was not just my companion. He was something greater. After Max saved that nurse, he became a legend around the hospital. Everyone who heard the story was amazed, but no one more than Emily, the nurse whose life he had saved. She had been shaken by the experience, but there was something about Max that made her believe in the impossible. She couldn't explain it, but when she saw him that day, she felt as if something inside her had awakened. She owed her life to him, but in return, Max had gained something too, an unbreakable bond. Emily and I began to spend more time together, both of us growing closer to the dog who had changed everything. Max, in his quiet way, had brought us together. He had a way of making people believe again. Days turned into weeks, and Max continued to thrive. He was no longer the fragile, abandoned dog I had found that fateful day. He was strong, his coat gleaming, his eyes filled with a spark of life I hadn't seen before. It was almost as if he knew his mission was not yet complete. One afternoon, Emily and I were sitting in the park, enjoying the warmth of the sun after a long stretch of rain, when something unexpected happened. Max, who had been calmly lying beside us, suddenly stood up and trotted over to a small group of children playing nearby. He approached them slowly, his head low, his body relaxed. But there was something in his demeanor that caught the attention of the children. They stopped what they were doing and watched as Max made his way over. Without hesitation, he laid down beside them, allowing one of the kids to stroke his fur. It was then that I realized Max wasn't just a survivor. He was a healer. The children, who had been playing carelessly moments before, now sat quietly around him, as if drawn to his calm energy. Max wasn't just saving lives in dramatic moments. He was teaching people to be present, to find peace in the chaos of their lives. Emily and I watched in silence, both of us knowing that Max's journey was far from over. He had changed the course of our lives, but he was also leaving an impact on everyone he met. In a world filled with noise and distractions, Max had become a quiet force for good. He wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder that love, loyalty, and compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. And as we walked back home, with Max leading the way, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the small miracle that had brought him into our lives. I had never truly understood the depth of the bond between a human and a dog. Until Max. It was like something unspoken, a quiet understanding that transcended words. As the days passed, I noticed something in him. He had become more than just a companion. He was my protector, my reminder to stay grounded, to appreciate the little moments, and to never take anything for granted. The connection we shared had a way of grounding me in ways nothing else could. But it wasn't just me. Max had a way of making everyone around him feel the same. Emily, who had been through so much, began to smile more. Her eyes had started to brighten, and her laugh, though quiet, became more frequent. It was as though Max was the key to unlocking parts of her that had been locked away, hidden behind the walls she had built over the years. She had always been strong, but now she was stronger than before. Max had this incredible ability to heal not only physically, but emotionally. One afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, Emily came in with tears in her eyes. At first, I thought something was wrong, but then she smiled through them. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said softly. "Not after everything I've been through. But Max, he's made me believe that I can." Those words hit me harder than I expected. I had always believed in the power of resilience, but hearing Emily say them aloud made me realize how much of an impact Max had made in our lives. It wasn't just the dramatic rescue that made him special. It was the everyday moments, the quiet companionship, the way he made everything feel like it was going to be okay. Later that week, as the weather turned warmer and the sun finally peeked through the clouds, we decided to take Max on a hike. The path we chose was one we had visited before, but this time it felt different. The air was crisp, the trees were beginning to bloom, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right. Max trotted ahead of us, as he always did, his tail wagging in the breeze. He was in his element, and I couldn't help but watch him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything he had given us, for everything he had taught us. We reached the top of the hill, and the view was breathtaking. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Emily and I stood there in silence, taking it all in, when Max suddenly stopped and turned to look at us. It was as if he was waiting for something, waiting for us to realize the beauty of this moment, the peace we had found together. I reached down and scratched behind his ears, feeling the warmth of his fur under my fingertips. In that moment, I realized just how far we had come. From the day I found Max, broken and abandoned, to now, standing together at the top of the world. Max had not only saved a life, he had saved a part of me, a part of Emily. And with each passing day, he reminded us of the power of love, of second chances, and of the strength that can be found when you least expect it. The days seemed to blur together, but with each passing one, Max continued to show me how much more he had to give. It was like watching someone grow, but instead of a person, it was a dog who had been through so much, yet still had the capacity to love, to heal, and to teach. Emily and I had started a new routine. Each day felt like a fresh start, like a new chance to move forward, and Max was always there, at the center of it all. One morning, I woke up to the sound of Max barking. It wasn't the usual playful bark, it was different. It was urgent, and it immediately got my attention. I rushed outside to find him standing by the door, his tail wagging, but his gaze fixed on something far beyond me. Emily was still inside, preparing breakfast, but Max was fixated on something in the distance. I followed his gaze, and there, across the yard, was a small bird struggling to fly. It was caught in a small patch of thorns, unable to break free. Max trotted over without hesitation. He nudged the bird gently with his nose, his movements careful and deliberate. He was trying to help. The sight of him, this dog who had been saved from the brink of death, now offering help to another creature in need, left me speechless. It was as if he understood that his survival wasn't just about him. It was about sharing the gift of life, of hope, with others. I knelt beside Max, gently picking up the bird and releasing it from the thorns. Max watched with that same intense focus he always had, but there was something different now. It wasn't just a dog helping another animal. It was a moment of connection, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could make a difference. Over the weeks that followed, Max continued to show us this. It wasn't always in big, dramatic ways. Sometimes it was just him curling up beside Emily on the couch, comforting her after a long shift. Other times, it was the way he would sit quietly by the window, watching the world go by, like he knew that everything had a place and a time. But what I realized more than anything was that Max was teaching us to be present, to appreciate the little things. He had shown us how to find beauty in the simplest moments. One evening, after a long day, Emily and I were sitting on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the night sky. Max was lying at our feet, content and calm. It was a peaceful moment, one of those rare times where everything felt right. As I looked over at Emily, I saw the way she looked at Max, the way her eyes softened. "I never thought I'd feel this at peace again," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. Max had brought us both back to life in a way no one could have predicted. From the day we first met, when I thought he was nothing more than a broken, abandoned dog, to now, he had become the heart of everything. He had healed not only me, but also Emily. And in return, we had learned to appreciate the miracles that were happening all around us, every single day. Max had saved us in ways we couldn't have imagined, and as I sat there with Emily and Max by my side, I knew this was only the beginning of a much greater journey. Max had been by our side through everything, and now, as we sat on the porch in the fading light of the evening, I realized just how much of a difference he had made in our lives. Every day felt like a gift, and Max, with his unwavering loyalty, had been the reason behind it. I could feel Emily's hand gently resting on mine, and I knew she was thinking the same thing. We were no longer the people we once were, broken and lost in the chaos of life. We had Max to thank for that. As the days passed, the bond between us grew stronger. Max became more than just a dog. He was family. I started to notice the little things, how he would wait patiently by the door when Emily returned from her shifts, his tail wagging excitedly. He had this way of making everything feel safe again, even in the most uncertain moments. But what struck me the most was how Max had become a beacon of hope for others too. One afternoon, we had a visitor, a neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who had always been a little wary of dogs. She was an older woman, in her late 70s, and she had lived alone for years. She had heard the stories about Max, and had finally worked up the courage to meet him. At first, she hesitated, standing at the door, unsure. Max, sensing her hesitation, slowly walked toward her, his eyes gentle, his movements calm. He stopped just in front of her and sat down, as if waiting for her to make the next move. Mrs. Jenkins, still unsure, extended her hand slowly. Max, without a second thought, nudged her hand with his nose, offering her his touch. It was a simple gesture, but it was enough. The tension in her body melted away, and she smiled, tears filling her eyes. "I never thought a dog could make me feel this way," she said softly. It was then that I realized Max had done something no one else could. He had broken down barriers, had given hope where there was none, and had healed more hearts than I could count. As the weeks went by, more and more people came by to meet Max. He had become a symbol of healing, a reminder that no matter how broken you are, there's always a chance for a fresh start. Emily and I watched as Max worked his quiet magic, never asking for anything in return. One evening, I took Max on a walk down the road to the old park we used to visit. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. Max was walking ahead of me, his head held high, tail swishing behind him. I couldn't help but smile. He had come so far, and so had I. In the distance, I saw a family, their child sitting alone on a swing, looking lost. Max, ever the instinctive healer, trotted over to the child without hesitation. The little girl's face lit up as she reached out to pet him. Her sadness seemed to melt away as Max licked her hand, his eyes full of compassion. I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a living reminder that love and compassion can change everything. And as I stood there, watching Max with the little girl, I realized that this was only the beginning. Max had shown us the power of love, of healing, and of second chances. He had reminded us that no matter how dark the world may seem, there's always light waiting to break through. And with Max by our side, I knew that we were ready for whatever came next. The seasons continued to change, and with each passing day, Max's presence seemed to anchor everything in our lives. It had been almost a year since that first day when I found him, broken and abandoned. Now, he had become the heart of our home, and Emily and I were both better for it. But as much as Max had changed us, there were still moments when I couldn't quite grasp how much he had done, not just for us, but for everyone he met. It was early morning when I first realized just how far Max's influence had stretched. Emily had gone to work, and I was sitting on the porch, watching the sun rise over the horizon, when a familiar car pulled up in the driveway. It was Mrs. Jenkins again, the elderly neighbor who had been so moved by Max's kindness. This time, she wasn't just visiting to see him. She was holding something in her hands, a small wooden box. I stood up and walked over to greet her, noticing the box had been carefully wrapped in a soft cloth. "I brought you something," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Max has been a blessing, not just to me, but to my whole family. He's brought peace where there was once sorrow." She handed me the box and smiled. "It's a little something, a token of our gratitude." Inside the box was a small carved figure of a German shepherd, meticulously crafted, with a look of serenity in its eyes, much like the look Max always wore. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Mrs. Jenkins told me that she had commissioned it from a local artisan, knowing how much Max meant to her, and to everyone who had been touched by him. She spoke of how she had seen him help her neighbor's troubled son, how he had calmed the fear in the heart of another, and how, in his own way, he had become a symbol of strength and hope in their tight-knit community. "He's done so much for us," Mrs. Jenkins continued, her voice wavering slightly. "I wanted to give him something, a little reminder of the good he's brought into the world. And I thought you might like to have this for him." I was at a loss for words. It was hard to believe that the dog who had been discarded, alone in the world, now stood as a beacon of light for so many people. Max had changed everything, not just for Emily and me, but for the people who had learned to love again through him. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see more and more people coming forward to share their stories. From the child who had found solace in Max's comforting presence to the young couple who had been struggling with the loss of a pet and found hope when they saw Max interacting with their new puppy, it seemed as if Max had touched the lives of everyone he encountered. It was during this time that I realized something else. Max had helped me heal in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Emily had told me that she could see the changes in me, how I had grown stronger, how the shadows from my past seemed to fade a little more each day. But it wasn't until that moment, when I stood in front of Mrs. Jenkins and held the small wooden carving of Max, that I understood just how much I had changed. Max had not only saved Emily's heart, he had saved mine too. The love and loyalty he gave so freely had been like a balm for the wounds I hadn't even known were still there. And now, as I stood in the light of the morning sun, holding that little figure of Max, I knew that the journey we had taken together, Emily, Max, and I, was just the beginning of something even greater. Max had become more than just a dog to us. He was a symbol of hope, a constant reminder that no matter how broken something seemed, it could always be mended. Emily and I had settled into a new rhythm, one that was full of life and light, thanks to the quiet but powerful presence of Max. But what I hadn't anticipated was the way Max's influence continued to grow, touching lives beyond just our little family. It happened one afternoon when Emily and I were walking through the park, Max happily trotting along beside us. The park was filled with the sounds of children playing and families enjoying the sunny day. As we passed a small group of parents and their kids, a woman approached us, her eyes wide with recognition. "Is this Max?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. I nodded, surprised at the sudden attention. "He's the one, isn't he?" she continued, her gaze softening as she looked down at Max. "I've heard the story. How he saved that nurse's life." Her voice was full of emotion, and I could tell she wasn't just talking about a simple rescue. There was more to it, something deeper. "I don't know if you realize," she went on, "but Max has inspired so many of us. My daughter was struggling with anxiety, and we didn't know how to help her. She wouldn't speak to anyone, wouldn't leave the house. But one day, after hearing Max's story, she wanted to meet him. And when we did, it was like a switch flipped. She started talking again. She started smiling. Max. He did that." I stood there, taken aback by the impact Max had made on their lives. It wasn't just about saving one person anymore. It was about something bigger, something that I had never expected. Max had become a beacon of healing, not just for us, but for so many others. The woman smiled at Max, who had sat down at her feet, his tail wagging gently. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "I don't know if you'll ever fully understand the difference he's made, but I wanted you to know." I smiled back, my heart swelling with gratitude. I had never imagined that our decision to adopt Max, to give him a second chance, would lead to so many lives being touched. Later that evening, Emily and I sat together, reflecting on everything that had happened. Max lay at our feet, content and peaceful, as usual. "I never thought it would be like this," Emily said softly, her voice filled with awe. "When we brought him home, I thought we were just saving a dog. But he saved so much more than that." I nodded, my heart full of emotions I couldn't quite put into words. Max had brought healing not only to us but to countless others, simply by being who he was, loyal, loving, and unwavering in his commitment to those around him. It was incredible to think about how far he had come from the days of being abandoned, alone, and broken. Now, he was a living testament to the power of second chances. It was clear to me that Max had not just changed our lives. He had become a part of something much bigger, something that was spreading across the hearts of everyone who crossed his path. And as I watched him rest quietly beside us, I knew that his journey was far from over. There were still more lives to touch, more hearts to heal. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a miracle, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love and hope could still shine through. As the months went by, I began to see more and more of the world through Max's eyes. His ability to change lives wasn't just a matter of the dramatic rescues or moments of intense heroism. It was in the quiet, everyday things that made his presence so profound. Max had a way of teaching us how to find beauty in the small moments, how to connect with the world in a way that felt genuine and full of love. One evening, after Emily came home from work, we decided to take a walk down to the lake nearby. It had become a ritual for us, a time to reflect and unwind after the hustle of the day. Max, as usual, was at the front, leading the way, his paws making soft prints in the damp earth. As we walked, I noticed how the sun was beginning to set, casting golden hues over the water. It was one of those moments where everything felt perfectly still, as if time itself had slowed down to give us a chance to savor the peace. Max stopped at the edge of the lake, his gaze fixed on the rippling water. He seemed to be in a deep state of calm, as though the world had quieted for him too. I stood beside him, feeling the cool breeze on my face, and watched the way the sunlight danced across the water's surface. Emily joined us, standing close, her hand brushing mine. For a moment, we didn't say anything. There was no need. The tranquility of the scene, the presence of Max, and the quiet connection we shared were more than enough. As we stood there, I realized just how much we had learned from Max. It wasn't about grand gestures or heroic acts. It was about living in the present, about appreciating the moments we had together. Max had shown us the importance of stillness, of finding peace even in the chaos of life. He had taught us that love didn't need to be loud to be felt deeply. It was the quiet moments that mattered most. As we made our way back home, I couldn't help but think about how far we had come since that first day when Max entered our lives. He had been the catalyst for so much change, not just for Emily and me, but for everyone he had touched. It was hard to imagine life without him now. He had become more than just a pet. He was a member of our family, a constant source of comfort and love. That night, as we sat together in the living room, Max curled up at our feet. I knew that this was only the beginning of his impact. Max had already changed our world in ways we could never have imagined, and I knew that, no matter where life took us next, he would always be at the center of it all. The world felt brighter, more full of possibility, with him by our side. And as I looked down at him, his head resting peacefully in his favorite spot, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Max had not only saved us, he had given us a new purpose, a new way of seeing the world, and a new way of loving each other. He had shown us that miracles weren't just things that happened. They were made, day by day, in the quietest, most unexpected moments. It had been a few weeks since that peaceful evening by the lake, and life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost too perfect to be real. Max had become the steady heartbeat of our home, his presence a constant reminder that there was always something to be grateful for, even in the most difficult of times. Emily and I had started to take more time for ourselves, to appreciate the small moments that we had once taken for granted. Our walks through the park became more frequent, and we would often stop by the lake, where the world felt like it paused for us. It was during one of these walks, on a crisp autumn afternoon, that we met someone who would change our lives in a way we never saw coming. We had just finished our walk, Max happily wagging his tail, when we noticed a young woman sitting on a bench near the edge of the park. She looked lost in thought. Her shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world was on her. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, there was a flicker of recognition, though I couldn't place it. As we approached, Max, ever the friendly soul, trotted over to her, his tail wagging, his eyes filled with that quiet sense of purpose he always seemed to carry. The young woman looked up at Max, her expression softening instantly. Without a word, she reached out to pet him, and Max immediately sat down beside her, leaning into her touch. I watched in silence as she stroked his fur, her eyes closing for a moment as if the simple act of petting him was enough to calm the storm inside her. Emily, noticing the exchange, gave me a gentle nudge. "He's doing it again," she whispered. I smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. Max had this incredible way of bringing peace to people, even without trying. After a few minutes, the woman looked up at us, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know why, but I feel different," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Slightly. Like, for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. This dog," she paused, her voice breaking. "This dog has somehow made everything feel better." We exchanged a look, both of us understanding exactly what she meant. Max had this way of healing, of making people feel seen, even in their darkest moments. It wasn't just about being a pet. It was about being a symbol of hope, of unconditional love. "What's your name?" I asked, sitting beside her. She smiled faintly, wiping away a tear. "Hannah," she replied. "I've been struggling with some things lately. It's hard to explain, but when I saw Max, it was like I could finally let go of everything that was weighing me down." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Max has that effect on people," Emily said gently. "He's always been more than just a dog to us. He's a reminder that no matter how tough life gets, there's always a way to find peace, to find joy." Hannah smiled again, this time more confidently. "I think I'm going to be okay," she said, her voice stronger now. "Thank you for bringing him here." As we left the park that day, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Max had done it again. He had touched someone's life in a way I couldn't have predicted. He was more than just a dog. He was a healer, a guide, and a reminder that even in the hardest of times, there was always a way forward. Emily and I walked side by side, Max leading the way, his tail wagging as he always did, and I realized that this quiet ripple effect of love and healing was exactly what we had needed all along. The weeks passed, and it became increasingly clear that Max was more than just a companion. He was a force in our lives, an anchor in a world that sometimes felt too overwhelming. Emily and I had found a rhythm, but it wasn't just because of the peace Max had brought into our home. It was the ripple effect of everything he touched. Each person he encountered, every life he affected, had its own quiet transformation. It was subtle, but undeniable. One afternoon, as I sat in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, I glanced out the window to see Max sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. His posture was calm, but there was a sense of purpose in the way he sat, his eyes scanning the horizon. I stood up and walked outside to join him, curious about what he was looking at. As I approached, Max stood up and walked over to me, his tail wagging gently. He nudged my hand with his nose, urging me to follow him. I chuckled softly, unsure of what was going on, but I followed him anyway. We walked across the yard, and as we neared the fence, I noticed a small car parked by the driveway. It was an unfamiliar car, and as it stopped, the driver stepped out. It was a woman I didn't recognize, and she was looking around nervously. Max, ever the intuitive soul, immediately approached her with a calm, steady gait. The woman froze, her eyes widening as Max walked up to her and gently nudged her hand. She hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure, but Max's quiet presence seemed to put her at ease. She bent down to pet him, her hand trembling slightly as she touched his fur. "It's okay," I said softly as I approached, sensing her discomfort. "He's very friendly." The woman looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quietly, her voice breaking. I didn't know who else to turn to. I've been struggling, and I've been so lost lately." I could see the weight in her eyes, the kind of weight that only those who had been through difficult times truly understood. Max, sensing her pain, stood by her side, his presence a silent comfort. "You're not alone," I said gently, taking a step closer. "Max here has a way of making people feel like they're seen, even when they don't know how to ask for help." She smiled through her tears, looking down at Max, who had now sat beside her, his head resting gently on her knee. "I don't know what it is about him," she whispered, "but he makes me feel like everything is going to be okay, like there's still hope." It was then that I realized something that had been slowly becoming clear over the past few months. Max wasn't just healing Emily and me, he was healing everyone around him. There was something magical about his presence, something that transcended the usual bond between a pet and its owner. Max had become a symbol of hope, a living reminder that even in our darkest moments, we could find light. After a few moments of silence, the woman looked up at me again, her eyes clearer, her shoulders less burdened. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now. "I think I'm going to be okay." As we walked back to the house, Max trotting ahead, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for everything he had brought into our lives. He had given us so much more than we had ever hoped for. He had shown us the true meaning of love, of compassion, and of the quiet, powerful effect one life can have on so many others. Max had changed everything, and in doing so, he had shown us how to be better, how to be more present, and how to find joy in the simple moments we so often overlooked. The days that followed felt like a new chapter in our lives, one filled with more than just routine. Max, in his quiet way, had transformed everything. He had brought peace, hope, and love to our home, but now, it was clear he was doing something much bigger. He was becoming a part of the community, a living reminder of what it meant to care for others, to be present, and to offer unconditional love. It was one evening, just after the sun had set, that I realized just how far Max's influence had spread. We were sitting in the living room, Max resting peacefully at our feet, when there was a soft knock at the door. Emily stood up to answer it, and I could hear her talking with someone outside. A few moments later, she stepped inside, followed by a familiar face, Hannah, the woman from the park. She was holding something in her hands, her expression a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something I couldn't quite place. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been thinking about Max, about what he did for me, and I realized that I hadn't properly expressed how much it meant. I wanted to bring this by, to let you know how much he's helped me." She handed me a small envelope, and as I opened it, I found a handwritten letter, its words filled with emotion. "I've been carrying around a lot of pain for a long time," she wrote. "And when I met Max, something in me started to shift. He didn't just offer comfort. He reminded me of the strength I had forgotten I had. He showed me that I could still heal, that I could still move forward. I know I'll never be able to thank him enough, but I wanted you to know that he's given me a second chance." I read the letter in silence, my heart swelling with gratitude for Max and everything he had done. It wasn't just about what he had done for Emily and me. It was about the ripple effect, the way he had reached out to others in ways we couldn't have imagined. "You're welcome to visit any time," I said, looking up at Hannah. "Max is always here to help." She smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she said softly. "And thank you for sharing him with us. He's a miracle." As she left, I turned to Emily, who was sitting beside me, a soft smile on her face. We both knew that Max's journey wasn't just about healing one heart. It was about healing many. It was about reminding people that there was always hope, even in the darkest of times. Max had become more than just a dog. He had become a symbol of resilience, of the quiet strength that lived in all of us. As the weeks went on, more people came to visit Max, each one carrying their own story, their own pain, and each one leaving a little lighter, a little brighter, because of the simple presence of this incredible dog. And with each visit, I saw something new in Max. It wasn't just that he had saved us. It was that he was saving everyone he met. He was showing us that love, in its purest form, could change the world, one person at a time. As I looked down at him, sleeping peacefully at my feet, I knew that this journey we were on together was far from over. Max had already changed so much, but there was still more for him to give. And I couldn't wait to see where his journey would take us next. It had been several months since Max had entered our lives, and with every day, his presence had continued to reshape everything. He had become an inseparable part of our family, but it was clear that his influence was spreading far beyond just the four walls of our home. Emily and I had begun to see the world in a new light, one that was brighter and more hopeful, thanks to Max's quiet strength. But Max's journey wasn't just about our healing. It was about the way he had touched every life he came across. One afternoon, as I was walking Max in the neighborhood, we encountered a familiar face. It was Mrs. Jenkins again, the elderly neighbor who had first brought us the wooden carving of Max. She was standing at the end of her driveway, looking down at the ground, her hands clasped in front of her. As soon as she saw us, she smiled, but there was something in her eyes that made me stop. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Jenkins?" I asked, walking over to her. She nodded, but there was a hesitation in her smile, a sadness I hadn't seen before. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft and thoughtful, "about Max and everything he's done for me, and for others. You know, I've never been one to share much of my life. I keep things to myself." She paused for a moment, as if gathering the courage to say more. "But after everything Max has done, after everything I've seen him do for people, I feel like I need to tell someone." I stood there, patiently waiting, knowing this was important. "Max has done more for me than anyone could ever understand," she continued, her eyes glistening with emotion. "He's given me a reason to keep going, even when things seemed so dark. I've lost so much in my life, and I didn't think I had anything left to give. But Max, he's shown me that there's always hope. And I realized something. I've been keeping myself locked away for too long. Maybe it's time to share that hope, to give back the way Max has." Mrs. Jenkins smiled again, but this time it was different. It was full of warmth, full of the kind of light that could only come from someone who had been touched by a true miracle. "I've decided to start volunteering at the local shelter," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I know I need to be there. For the animals, for the people who need hope the way I did." I felt a rush of pride for her. It was incredible to see how Max had inspired not only us, but everyone he met. His quiet acts of kindness had started a ripple effect that was reaching even the most unexpected places. Max had shown Mrs. Jenkins that no matter how many years had passed, there was always room to start again, to find new purpose, and to spread love. As we continued our walk, I couldn't help but think about how much more Max had to offer. It wasn't just about the big moments, the dramatic rescues, or the grand gestures. It was about the everyday impact he made, the way he changed people's lives without ever asking for anything in return. Max had shown us that kindness, no matter how small, could create a wave of change that spread through communities, through hearts. By the time we made it home, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Max had not only changed my life and Emily's, but had now begun to change the lives of others. He was a reminder that hope could be found in the simplest things, a wagging tail, a gentle nudge, a moment of stillness, and that it was never too late to start again, to heal, and to give. As I watched Max settle down on his favorite spot by the window, his eyes peaceful and content, I realized that this was just the beginning of his journey. There was so much more for him to give, and I couldn't wait to see where his quiet strength would take us next. As the months went on, Life with Max seemed to fall into a beautiful routine, but there were moments that still took me by surprise. Max had become more than just a dog. He had become a teacher, a healer, and a constant reminder that the simplest acts of kindness could change lives. Emily and I had both changed, but it was impossible to ignore how much Max had taught us. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, I noticed a familiar face in the window, Mrs. Jenkins. She had been visiting the shelter every week since she'd decided to volunteer, and I could tell there was something different about her. She walked into the house with a soft smile, but this time there was a quiet energy about her that I hadn't seen before. "I wanted to share something with you," she said, her voice calm but full of purpose. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and handed it to me. I started keeping track of the stories of the animals I meet at the shelter. I write down their progress, their stories, and every little thing that reminds me why we do this. I thought you and Max might like to see it. I opened the notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches of dogs, cats, and even a few rabbits, alongside detailed notes of their healing journeys. Some pages had photos taped to them. Others had little scribbles of encouragement. It was clear that Mrs. Jenkins had poured her heart into this project. "This is amazing," I said, overwhelmed by the depth of her commitment. "You're really making a difference." She smiled, but there was a humility in her expression. "Max showed me how to be present, how to show up for others. I've learned so much from him. I just want to give back, even if it's in small ways." It was in that moment that I realized how far Max's impact had reached. He hadn't just helped us. He had given Mrs. Jenkins a new sense of purpose, a new way to heal the world around her. She had become a part of something bigger than herself, just as Max had been. As the evening went on, Max lay beside us, content and calm, his gentle breathing filling the room with a sense of peace. I thought about how far he had come, from the broken, abandoned dog I had found on that fateful day to the symbol of hope and healing he had become. Max had done more than just save lives. He had sparked a change in every person he met. Emily joined us, sitting down at the table with a cup of tea, her eyes soft with emotion. "He's changed everything," she said quietly, her gaze drifting to Max, who looked up at her with those familiar, trusting eyes. "He's shown us that there's always a way forward, even when we think we've lost everything." I nodded, feeling the same weight of gratitude in my chest. Max had taught us all to look for the good, to find hope even in the darkest moments. His presence in our lives was a constant reminder that love, compassion, and patience could heal even the deepest wounds. As we sat together, sharing the quiet moments that had become so precious, I realized that Max had done exactly what he had been meant to do. He had healed us, and now, through Mrs. Jenkins and so many others, he was continuing to heal the world, one small act of kindness at a time. The future felt bright, filled with possibilities, and no matter what came our way, I knew we would always have each other, and Max, by our side.